Hey, what is up, you awesome people? Clunky here. Hopefully you guys are doing amazing. And today we are going to talk about the latest changes for PvP in a patch 11.1 season 2 of the War Within. But before we move on, I actually need your help on something. If you could just hit the like button, drop down a comment down below asking me any type of video really, except maybe like, OnlyFans stuff, because I'm not going to do that, okay? And also, hit the bell button, guys. If you don't do it, YouTube will not actually show you my videos, even though you're subscribed. So, that's literally how dumb YouTube is. Thank you so much for the help. I really do appreciate it. With that being said, let's jump straight into it. So, the first buff is going to be for healer specializations, okay? So, they're buffing Gladiator's Medallion for healers. So instead of having a 90 seconds cooldown on that medallion, now the cooldown is going to be 60 seconds. So if you play a healer right now, man, you're going to have a blast, because healers right now are looking pretty insane, guys. Okay, in season 1 of the War Within, healers were just like bonkers insane. Like Mistweavers just carrying the flags, teleporting everywhere, Now you can't actually teleport with flags. They kind of nerfed it. But if you play a healer right now, you're going to be able to get out of CCs way more often. Alright, so we got Druid Restoration here. All healings increased by 5% in PvP combat. That's not a lot, but it is kind of needed. Honestly, Restoration is kind of bad right now. I'm not gonna lie. Then you've got that PvP talent here called Ancient of Lore, okay? When you press it, you literally cast for like 1.5 seconds. It turns you into a big-ass broccoli, and it reduces all damage by 30% instead of 20%. So it's going to be a little bit of a buff for that PvP talent right here. Then Ancient of Lore's Mass Blooming cooldown reduced to 7 seconds instead of 8 seconds. So it's going to provide you guys with a little bit more healing. I'm gonna be honest, man. I don't know who at Blizzard's HQ right now is designing class changes. I mean, it must be a monkey typing on a keyboard. It just does not make any sense when you compare Restoration Druid to, let's say, Discipline Priest. I mean, if you guys play WoW, you kind of understand what I mean. So, anyhow, let's move on to Evoker Preservation. Apparently, they actually buffed Dream Breath healing by 20% in PvP combat. So, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. Let's move to Marksmanship Hunter. Okay, so we've got Tensile Bowstring. Reduces the cast time of aim shot by 25%, down from 50%. I'm going to be honest, yeah, Marksmanship Hunters are kind of insane right now, so this nerf was indeed kind of needed, alright? So, moving on to Unhearing Vision. Oh my gosh, increases your critical strike chance by 5%, down from 10%, and critical strike damage by 10% was 20% in PvP combat. So that sounds interesting. Maybe we're going to be starting to run with double tap instead of Unhearing Vision. What about survival? So the one-shot potential with Flanking Strike was too devastating, so we're reducing its damage and distributing that damage to the rest of the kit for survival. Okay, so they're nerfing the burst and giving more damage to sustain. So Flanking Strike, damage reduced by 30% in PvP combat. That's 30%. That's kind of a huge nerf. All spell and ability damage increased by 4% in PvP combat. Spearhead increases critical strike chance by 15% in PvP combat, down from 30%. Holy heck, dude, that's a huge ass nerf. And Deadly Duo increases your critical strike chance by 15% in PvP combat, down from 30%. So they're nerfing everything like crazy and buffing all of your damage by 4%. Thank you, Blizzard. Mage, Dragon's Breath now breaks based on small damage threshold, okay, instead of any damage. Kind of a super weird change, honestly. And then we've got Fire Mage. Frost Fire Severe Temperatures is now 50% effective in PvP combat. So if you guys watch my tier list video for the season 2 of the Warcraft. I'm gonna say the same shit again. Basically, don't play Fire Mage. Fire Mage is dead in season 2, basically. Okay, so Frostfire Empowerment now increases damage done by 15%, and PvP combat was 36%. Yeah, don't play Fire Mage. Just like if you actually have a Fire Mage, just like delete that character. And then you've got Mistweaver Monk. Ooh. Conduit of the Celestials. Celestial conduit damage increased by 12% and PvP combat. So it's going to be the same for Windwalker. Windwalker gets Conduit of the Celestials. Damage decreased by 12% in PvP combat. So that's a huge drop off, especially since you can actually pick up a PvP talent that makes it so that when you use Conduit of the Celestials, you are immune to CCs. But we're going to see Windwalker right now is insane. If you play Windwalker, you must be having a blast in PvP, man. That's kind of crazy. All right, let's go for Pally. Retribution. Blade of Justice damage increased by 25% in PvP combat. Wow. Final Verdict damage increased by 10% in PvP combat. So this is huge, guys, because if you guys don't know, the tier set actually increases the damage of Final Verdict, so that might actually be something to look for if you play Retribution Pally. Expurgation damage increased by 40% in PvP combat. So I'm gonna be honest, who the hell actually cares about Expurgation? Blizzard, delete that shit ability from the game. Give us more direct damage, okay? We don't play Retribution Pally to deal dot damage over time. Oh boy, Discipline is getting hit in the balls, boys. Alright, let's go over the changes, okay? Power Word Shield absorption reduced by 10% in PvP combat. Power Word Radiance healing reduced by 10% in PvP combat. That's huge, man. Archangel now increases the healing of Evangelism by 15% down from 30%. Insane. Penance damage and healing reduced by 10% in PvP combat. Wow. Okay, so the dev note here. Basically a bunch of fancy words which actually translate into everyone's been playing Oracle and we want to force people to play Void Weaver. That's literally it, okay? So Void Weaver, Inner Quietus is now 25% more effective in PvP combat. There we go. Like they're buffing Void Weaver so hard that you guys are forced into playing it. Void Weaver, Void Blast damage increased by 30% in PvP combat. Like 30%, that's quite a lot, man. Void Weaver, Void Infusion is now 60% effective in PvP combat. The thing is, Oracle is more of a defensive hero talent tree, and Void Weaver is the more offensive one. So apparently the meta right now is shaping towards a more aggressive playstyle for Discipline Priests, which is, it sounds pretty cool. I can't wait to see what's going to happen with that. It sounds like Discipline Priests would actually have to cast a lot more to be viable nowadays. Oh boy, Holy Priest is getting some huge freaking buffs, guys. Divine Hymn healing increased by 80% in PvP combat. That is insane. Holy Fire damage increased by 30% in PvP combat. We might see Holy Priests coming back in terms of damage because they were kind of good in Dragonflight for damage. Okay, Smite damage increased by 80% in PvP combat. Holy heck. Yeah, so that sounds like a pretty offensive priest meta right here. And we got Rogue Subtlety. Okay, dev notes. I'm gonna translate everything once more. Apparently, Subtlety was one-shotting too much, and they're kind of nerfing that damage. Okay, so Finality now increases finisher damage by 8 to 15% in PvP, was 15 to 30%. Shadow Blades now duplicates finishers at 10% effectiveness in PvP combat, was 15%, so 5% nerf. Darkest Night now increases the damage of Eviscerate by 10% in PvP combat, was 19%, so that's a huge 9% nerf. Symbolic Victory now increases Eviscerate or Black Powder damage by 10% in PvP combat, was 18%. Wow, some big nerfs. Danse Macabre now increases damage by 2% per stack instead of 4%. Again, huge nerfs. Backstab damage increased by 20% in PvP combat. Gloomblade damage increased by 20% in PvP combat. Shadow Strike damage increased by 20% in PvP. Rupture damage increased by 25%. Wow. Eviscerate damage increased by 25%. And Secret Technique damage increased by 10% in PvP combat. So they're nerfing the one-shot potential and buffing the sustained damage potential. That's literally it. Ellie Shammy, baby. Okay, so again, dev notes, literally fancy words just to say that they're nerfing mastery, because our mastery was like our most damaging ability in the game. So if you guys play Ellie, you kind of understand what I'm talking about. Elemental Overloads now deal 60% reduced damage in PvP combat, meaning that whenever you cast, let's say, Lava Burst, and your mastery procs, you cast another Lava Burst, that Lava Burst will actually deal 60% reduced damage. However, how it works, they're literally buffing the damage bonus that we get from Mastery Elemental Overloads. Now, it increases the physical and elemental damage by 30% more in PvP combat. So, base damage with your Mastery, you're going to be dealing more damage, but your procs are going to be dealing less damage, if that makes sense, okay? Let me know in the comment section if it did not make sense. Lava Burst damage increased by 20% in PvP combat. That is huge. Holy heck, I love it. Lightning Bolt damage increased by 30% in PvP combat. Wow, big Stormkeepers, baby. Chain Lightning damage increased by 30% in PvP combat. So we might see an uprising of the Lightning build, guys. Okay, so I'm going to work on that, see if that's something we can actually pull off. Ice Fury damage increased by 20% in PvP combat. Yeah, Ice Fury is pretty... It's way better than it used to be, but I don't like pressing that ability anyways. Frost Shock damage increased by 20%. That's good. Again, I would rather have Frost Shock being like completely deleted from the game. But, you know, it's better than what it used to be. Stormbringer Tempest damage increased by 20% in PvP combat. There we go. So, looks like we're going to be forced to actually dip our toes into Stormbringer, because Tempest damage 20%, that's huge, guys. That's actually huge, because it hits for crazy numbers. And then we got yet another nerf to Warrior. Warrior. Champion Smite critical strike damage decreased to 15% in PvP combat was 25%. Well, sorry about that. I know Fury Warrior is kind of insane right now. It looks pretty fun. I haven't had the chance to test it because I work 50 hours a week. But this could actually change if you guys help me power up the algorithm. Like, drop comments down below, share my videos. This actually helps me so much. And by the way, don't forget to hit the bell button to not miss out on the new infos, new guide videos that I'm releasing almost weekly. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Clunky. Hopefully you guys have a wonderful rest of the day and stay awesome, gentlemen.